Hello, everybody, and welcome to Michigan Living with Jeff. I'm Jeff, your realtor, and let's talk about what's going on in the news, shall we? All right. How about there's a study, and over one-fifth of Michigan adults don't want to have kids. Researchers find that most childless adults choosing not to have children at a young age. Traditional Western ideals often equate adulthood, with parenthood. But a new study out of Michigan has found this not necessarily the case anymore. More and more adults are explicitly choosing not to have children now more than ever, according to a study published in July on Nature.com by two researchers from Michigan State University. These adults are being called child-free and appear to make up a significant portion of the adult population in Michigan. Researchers Zachary Neal and Jennifer Watling Neal say that previous studies conducted to determine the number of child-free adults used methods and data that appear to have led to significant undercounting of this population. That's why the pair conducted a more nuanced study of the adult population in Michigan to get a better idea of how many people are choosing not to be parents, compared to those who are unable to. There's a difference. Who are planning to be in the future and who are unsure. All right, that's cool. All right. While reviewing a 2018 survey of male and female adults in Michigan, the researchers placed survey participants into one of six categories. Parent, adults with children who are biological, step, and or adopted. Child-free, adults explicitly choosing not to have children regardless if they are able to or not. Undecided, adults who do not have children and don't know if they plan to in the future. Not yet a parent, adults who are not parents yet but plan to be in the future. Childless, adults who do not have children but wish they had or could have. Okay, there's a distinction. Ambivalent, adults who do not have children and have conflicted feelings about whether they want to or not. All right, below is a graph showing the participants in the study. All right, so do you have or have you ever had any biological step or adopted children? Yes. Out of them, the number was 926. So straight up for the parents, 926. Do you plan to have any biological or adopted children in the future? All right, because here's always the key part. Yes was 84. Don't know, which would be undecided, would be 103. Do you wish to have do you wish you had or could have biological or adopted children? All right, don't know, 48 of them. Childless, 65. And child-free, 244. Interesting. All right, here's the findings, which is kind of interesting. The majority of Michigan adults, 49.62%, are parents. Half. Let's just simply go half, okay? This statistic wasn't necessarily surprising. No kidding. The number of child-free adults, however, was larger than expected. Researchers found that child-free adults made up the second largest demographic among adults in Michigan, representing 21.64% of the entire adult population. That's a lot. That is a lot. That means more than one-fifth of the state's adult population is explicitly choosing not to have children, which is fine. According to Michigan State University researchers, other studies have analyzed fertility-based measurements, i.e. examining whether someone could have a biological child versus someone who couldn't, estimated that about 2.2% to 9% of adults in the U.S. were childless and therefore child-free. But the latest researchers say that those terms are distinctly different, and that the old studies may have excluded infertile adults who do not want children, or may have ignored that the prevalence of child-free adults has grown over time. I will, even for my own, from people I know and stuff like that, the number of people that are, I know, especially younger adults, who are like, what do I want kids for? Has drastically gone up, as far as, for that. In either case, our findings suggest that a large adult population do not have children and do not want them, the study reads. The other groups of Michigan adults without children were much smaller in numbers, researchers found. All right, so just for that part and so that, we got this right here for the percentages as they're being brought down. All right, much better graph. Much better graph. Oops. Actually, so that was silly of me. Right here. Okay, we're talking about that. But then when we're talking about the real graph, all right, here we go. About 50% of all adults are parents. One way or another, they are parents. All right, but then you have, all right, child-free. Almost 25%, roughly. All right, because you have this I basically is your amount of possible error. That's where it's the upper portion of it, lower portion of it. So really about 22% generically, but still 22% is huge. I always have to take that into consideration because of when my clients are looking for stuff. I have to be able to go, okay, so what exactly do you want for your future? Because if you're not looking for kids, that's one less bedroom. So which of course can also be or less. It could be one or even two less bedrooms. So it's, you don't need to be able to have a $400,000 house, right? So it can make life quite a bit cheaper. And trust me, children are expensive. I know. Here I am, so having to be able to pay for my child's new school clothes. School starts real soon. So, age of child-free decision. Now, here's interesting. The study also examined the age at which a person made the decision to be child-free, which turned out to be relatively young. Researchers say the majority of child-free Michigan adults determined that they do not want to have children when they were between the ages of 10 to 19 years old. 34% of them decided between 10 to 19 they don't want any. Or when they were in their 20s, almost 32%. Wow. About 17% of child-free adults say they made the decision not to become a parent when they were in their 30s. And even fewer said they made the decision in their 40s or later. Let's take a look at that. All right. Age of decision. Here's a major one. Oh, okay. There's your under 10, which is a really low number, but as it should be. 10 to 19. Wow, look at that gap in probability for error. Jesus, that's a lot. Same with the 20 to 29s. Wow. Which is what I'm already seeing just by meeting people and stuff like that. Wow, that is something to be able to think about and stuff like that. So basically, and stuff like that, these people right here are heavily influenced and stuff like that by probably environment and overpopulation, etc. Because I hear that all the time. I was like, hey, you don't want to reproduce? You don't need to. It's perfectly fine. Zachary and Jennifer Neal say that previous studies essentially place child-free adults in two categories: early articulators and postponers. Early articulators are people who choose to be child-free when they were quite young, often before marriage or partnership. Postponers are child-free adults who may have planned to have children, but delayed doing so, and then later made the decision to remain child-free. I seem to think about it a little bit differently, at least from personal experience. Early articulators, decide when they're young. Okay, that's fine. Postponers, I know a few people and stuff like that, especially women that are older, that are older and well, they can't find anybody to actually give them children. Because it's a sticky situation. It really is. According to a Michigan study, most child-free adults in the state would be considered early articulators, and based on the survey, many women who reported making the decision in their late teens and 20s are now in their late 30s. Right. Pretty much you're done. Indicating a persistent desire not to have children over nearly 2 decades. The large number of early articulators, together with women's reported persistence in their decision not to have children, could point to changing norms toward parenthood and increasing recognition of the child-free choice as a viable alternative. Of course it is. This is important because it suggests that when doctors greet child-free women's requests for, here we go. This is where it gets a little sticky. This is important because it suggests that when doctors greet child-free women's requests for sterilizations with hesitation due to fear that a woman will change her mind later, it's misinformed. I wouldn't agree to that. It is misinformed and paternalistic. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Because there's quite a few women I've known and do know. Very few of them and stuff like that, because what's the option for the doctor? If all of a sudden you tell him, oh yeah, here you go, here's a surgery that you can't you can't undo, and then he performs it, but then all of a sudden later on, when all of a sudden you get the desire to have children, or whatever, and then all of a sudden, well, you can't. Because the doctor removed your ability to be able to have children. How likelihood and some of that is it that they're going to be afraid of getting sued, into oblivion? You should have known better. Blah 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 blah. And especially with our court systems. Yeah. So I know a few doctors, however, that are kind of like, they have to be able to side on the, go to the side of caution and fear of, what can happen to them if all of a sudden you change your mind and all of a sudden come at them, even like 10 years later. Researchers believe that more studies should be conducted on populations throughout the U.S. and the Western world to better understand the prevalence of child-free adults and the seemingly shifting culture around explicitly choosing not to become a parent. Still, the study holds firm that a number of child-free adults is greater than previously estimated, and researchers believe that the number may also continue to grow. This study offers critical insights on child-free adults who are a demographically significant segment of the population, but whose numbers have been substantially underestimated in the past. Probably because there wasn't as many in the past. The study reads, this means that many people may be at risk of negative outcomes experienced by child-free adults, including exclusion from work-life balance considerations, right? Denial of medical care, I'm assuming that's basically about making sure they can't have any. And attribution of negative stereotypes. Clarifying the size of the population can not only direct attention towards reducing these negative outcomes, but also highlight for young adults that the decision not to have children is quite common. Well, lately, sure. Um, but it is an interesting study. It mostly coincides. I'm a little shocked with the numbers, to be honest. But it goes along with a bunch of people that I know. So this is an interesting little situation. So what should you take away from this? Even what I take away from this is that whenever I have clients and I'm asking them, it's like, well, what do you want? What are you looking for? What do you what is your future, especially when you're planning on where you're going to live and how you're going to live, etc. I always take that into consideration. If you don't have any children, okay, you don't have any children, and so it makes it easier for you. You don't need as big a room. You don't have to worry about the school districts, etc. Because you don't have any children going to the school districts. And you don't have to spend as much money, for a place to live. You can get by with less. Even if you're just going to be wanting to be able to have a 1 or 2 bedroom house or whatever. Renting and stuff like that is generally not a good option, especially once when you start making any money, and if you want to actually start accumulating wealth. There's nobody out there going, oh yeah, if you want to accumulate wealth, be a renter. No, everybody always says and always has for a very long time, so maybe 100 years or so, about if you want to accumulate wealth, you got to own land, which means you got to be able to own your own property. So, always and so whenever you're going to be dealing with your agent in order to be able to find a good place for you, with somewhere where you're going to be happy, do like hopefully in some of your realtor will be like me and be able to ask you, how do you want to live? What are your hobbies? And then look for areas that mesh with your hobbies and what you like to do. All right. Especially if you're not planning on having children, well, you don't have to care about it as much, do you? You can be able to have a smaller house. You can, necessarily, because there are some people who still want the big houses, just because they like, having room to grow and expand, but not necessarily having children, which is still fine. So, just have a consideration, on where do you want to live and what type of hobbies and, what do you enjoy, because everyone is different. So it's always key to be able to find out what your options are. Pinpoint how you want to live. Then from there, what your hobbies are, etc. I always take it into, okay, fine, here are hobbies, etc. Now let's boil it down to, what areas and so will fill your needs. Then of course, how much money you're able to afford for a place. Then let's look for properties and so in those price ranges, and let's see where we can get you as close as possible, so that hopefully you will be a lot happier for a much longer period of time, than you would be if you were to just be able to find some property somewhere, just my thoughts. If you have any questions or comments, whatever, put them below. Please like and share, and I will get back with you again. You have a great one. Bye-bye.